Hello, I'm Rick Stivers. I'd like to welcome you to Young Martin's Reels. Today's reel is going to be this Shakespeare Ugly Cast reel, and this is a special request from Rudy. I believe his last name is pronounced Quintana. Rudy called me and said he was having difficulty with the drag and couldn't get his drag to work. That's 2 drags in a row this week that I've had people had issues with. So we're going to see if we can't take this apart. I've never had one of these ugly cast apart before, and see if we can't figure out what's going on with it, and at least show him how to take it apart, and hopefully how to get it back together again. We're going to start off by taking the cover off right here. Okay. And then we're going to take off this spinner head. And we're going to do that by holding tight to the handle and reverse. Oh, this one was already loose. Come right off. That doesn't always work that way, folks, I can promise you. Okay, we got some old grease in there. We can get rid of that. All right, next we are going to take off this handle. We'll do that by removing this screw right here. This one looks like it's been out a time or two. Now, I can't always do this, but when Rudy requested this reel, I didn't have one, and I found one cheap on eBay. Of course, I posted it, and somebody went and bought the really cheap one out from under me. But there was still another one that was fairly inexpensive, so I went ahead and bought that one. And let's see what we got to do now. Take this further apart. We're going to go ahead and take off this C-clip right here, or E-clip. Okay. Off comes the clip. And we got a couple of drag washers here. There's 2 of them here. Should be 2 more underneath. Okay. There they are. Okay. And here's more drag washers. 2 of them. This one here's a bent one. It's designed to be bent like that. It's a spring washer. And this one here's a flat. And the 2 do not fit together. That's what it's made that way. All right, let's see now about taking this gear out. This should slide right out, I believe. Not promising anything. Okay. But I am starting to see a little of why Rudy was having difficulty with it. Let's take the grease and oil off of it. Let's take a look at what we have here. There we go. Okay, did you see that, Rudy? Did you see how that ring came out? Okay, what you got to do is get this started on there, like so. All right, it's going to come over to here, and then we're going to walk the drag knob, and that's your adjustment for the drag knob. If you try to just pull this off, it's not going to come off. What you have to do is roll this around till you go past the teeth on the gear, and then rotate this, and it'll come right off. It's threaded around the inside. Okay, I got that off to that point. Now, in order to take this back part, and this is all your drag, Rudy. All of your drag is right here in this set of washers. Okay, so we'll address that, but let's go ahead and do the entire reel, not just the drags. So let's go ahead and we're going to remove this screw right here, and this one on the other side. Okay. That remove those 2. I'm thinking that's going to release this collar right here. All right. And this, if we want to look at how it goes in, this opening over here is going to go to the right-hand side of the reel. So when that goes back on, we're going to put it back in that position. Let's see if it can be accidentally put on the other way. No, it doesn't fit properly. You see how it doesn't lock in place? When you put it the correct way, there, it will lock into place and you can put the screws in. Okay, and they're offset so you couldn't even begin to put the screws in the wrong way. All right, that's got that. Now, I think we're going to go ahead and take out these 2 screws, and I'm going to hold off on the smaller one because I'm not sure, but I have a feeling these 2 here are holding the back side and the front side of the case together. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove the 2 larger ones first. That's a much longer screw. Okay, and let's take out the other one. Feels like this one's a shorter screw. Yep, it is. So the longer of the 2 screws goes in the bottom. All right, let's see if it will come apart at this point. Still does not come apart. Okay, so let's move on to the 3rd screw. Okay, this is the smaller head screw, and it goes on this left-hand side, on the right-hand side over here. Now this whole thing comes apart. Okay, and that allows us to get into the gearing. There we go. And it looks pretty good inside. Now, your axle shaft is not going to come out unless you pull these screws out to remove the crankshaft. And if you're going to do that, you got to keep an eye on what's going on with this anti-reverse over here. Let's take a look at how this works. Okay, when you wind it this way, it continues to flow. When you go to back up, see how that lifts up and locks? Okay, and if you take it apart, you've got to get it back together just exactly that way. So, I'm going to recommend most people, if all the parts are working well, I'm going to recommend that you go ahead and just grease all these parts while you're there. But this being Young Martin's Reels, that's not the way we do things, is it? Okay, we're going to go ahead and take it the rest of the way apart so that if someone has one that has to be taken apart, they know what they're going to need to do. Okay, those 2 screws are out. There goes your bearing cap. We actually have roller bearings in here. That's nice. Okay, let's go ahead and take out the 2 for the other side. We kept those on this side. We're going to put the other one on the other side. All right, that's got that off. Okay, now we have a bushing on this side and a bearing on this side. And they look to be the same size, so it looks like if you wanted to, you could probably go and purchase a bearing and put it on there, the other side. All right, we're going to lift this out. Okay, before we move any of this, I want you to get a really good look at how the anti-reverse claw, or pawl, whichever term you wish to use on it, is sitting here. We're going to grab hold of it and gently lift it out, like so. Okay, that foot right there has to go into, I don't know if you can see it, but see that hole under there has to fit into that hole with the short side facing in and the long side facing to the rear. Okay, that's how that part has to go in. Now, before we take any of this apart, let's take a good look at what we have here. This is our anti-reverse. And it's got a spring which wraps around the gear. We can probably slide this bearing off. Yep, there goes the bearing off. And that gives you a good view of what's going on with the anti-reverse lever and the spring for it. Okay? And if you look, you can see that it goes easily one way, but it creates resistance going the other way. And that anti-reverse claw is what's going to stop it. Okay? If you want to take that off, you can. I'm going to leave it in, well, let's go ahead and take it off. There we go. All right. Now it'll make it easier to clean the gear. And here's our bushing on the other side. And now that's one crankshaft that's ready to be scrubbed and cleaned. The only thing we've got left to take out is going to be our axle shaft. Now, if your axle shaft is gummed up and does not want to move the pinion on the gear or on the shaft, you can take this E-clip off the end. And when you take that off, you can take and clean this shaft. This shaft is clean. I'm not going to take that apart. You can see what you do there. You take the E-clip off. When it does, the spring's going to pop loose. You can hold it down if you wish. That's a really stout spring, though. It's not going to hold down easily. Yeah, that is a really stout spring. You pull that E-clip off, let the spring come up, and then you could slide all of this off. But this one is in really remarkably good shape. There is a bearing at the front. And, well, let's take it apart so we can take that bearing out and clean it. All right. Okay, we're going to zoom in a little bit here. Okay. I'm going to push down on the spring. It's hanging, so there we go. While holding the spring down, I want to grab hold of it and pull that E-clip off. There we go. There's the E-clip off right there. Get the E-clip off. Now the spring will come off. The pinion gear will come off. And that bearing doesn't look like it wants to come off. But it is. It's slowly coming off. Well, I've got it up enough that I can get it to spin freely, and I'll clean it good. And then I'm going to push it back down the way it belongs. And there is everything taken apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and clean all these parts. And we're going to see if we can't get this all back together. And hopefully, Rudy, when we get done, you'll be able to take yours apart, clean it, put it back together, and it's going to work. So let me get back to you. So now our pieces parts are all nice and clean. Let's go ahead and push the bearing back down. I cleaned it pretty good. And we're going to give it a coating of oil. And spin it around a few times. There we go. All right, now we're going to put that back on the axle shaft, facing with the gear facing forward, or bearing facing forward, like so. Now when that's on, it can't rotate, okay? Only the bearing can rotate, okay? Now, we're going to put the spring back on, and this is the hard part of this. It's going to be getting this E-clip snapped back into place. Gotta get my screwdriver ready. Put my thumb over it so it can't pop. There we go. There's the spring back on. We're going to put some grease on this axle shaft because it's going to slide up and down like so. There we go. And on the rotating portion of this, we're going to go ahead and put oil. Get that done. Let me make sure I clean this out. Okay. We now install the axle shaft back inside. But before we do that, let's go ahead and grease our pinion gear. Slide it in like so. Next part that's going to go in is going to be this main gear. And now where it goes in, we need to reassemble all these pieces and parts. Okay, so this piece is going to go on first. It slides all the way down. That's our anti-reverse lever. That's going to go down here. Okay, this piece here has to come down, slide over this center, but we got to get that hook into that hole in the end right there. And then we got to get the whole thing to slide down so that it evenly is on there all the way around. Okay, next to go on is going to be these two shim washers. Now you didn't see those come off because they were stuck to the bearing. And next to go on is going to go the bearing itself. And let's give the bearing itself a coating of oil. And we're going to set this down for a minute. And we're going to come back over here. And we're going to take this lever. And we're going to set it back into the case. And remember that this little tab right here has got to go into this hole right here in the case. Like so. All right. We've got one piece left to put on this assembly before it goes in. That's going to be this bushing on this side over here. Now, before we put that bushing on, we need to give it a little bit of grease because it's a bushing and not a bearing. There we go. Slide that on. And now we should be able to set this whole thing down inside here. Now, when we do, if you look, this little foot right here has got to fit inside that notch on that anti-reverse lever. So you got to get this to drop down, line up with the other gear, line up with that anti-reverse lever, and everything has to go inside. And if you've got it right, when you hold it down and rotate it, it is not right. Okay? The reason we can tell it's not right is because it's not locking. Okay? So we did not get it in quite right. This lever should be further forward. If I remember correctly, when we looked at it, this was actually in more of a forward position. So let's try it again. And of course that lever fell out when we pulled it loose. So let's bring it back. Slide the base of it into the channel. Like so, and let's try this again. Okay, let's make sure this is sitting as far forward as it will go. Mesh it with the gear. Get it to go down, and it looks like it has. Okay, now let's see what happens when we rotate. And that is not in because that lever is not in the right position. This lever should be on the other side of that metal plate. So we've got it wrong, and it fell out again. I think I'm gonna put a little grease this time, see if I can get it to stay in place a little bit better. Okay, and get our main gear back, our axle shaft back in there properly. Okay, we're gonna put a little grease on the tip of it this time. So when we set it in there, hopefully it's going to glue itself in place with the grease. Okay, this design has always been one of my least favorite anti-reverses. There we go. Make sure my spring is still properly mounted where it belongs. Take the gear, drop it in forward. Should be leaning more, there we go, like that. And this is not down where it needs to be. Because we can tell this bearing is not dropped in. I think it fell down that time. Okay, bearing's in. The gear's where it needs to be. Okay, now look. Now we know we've got it in the right position. Okay, let's go ahead. Before any of it slips out, put our bearing retainer back in. before I put the other side in, let's make sure that it is working properly. And it is not. There we go. Anti-reverse is working. Okay. So let's go and put the bushing retainer back together on this side. All right. Now we're going to come back and we're going to grease this gear. And let's see if it will rotate as it should. There we go. That's sweet. Nice and smooth. All right. Now it's time to start putting all of this back into this case. Now, here's our drag knob right here. The drag knob, you're going to want to take and put it up here so it falls into that hole. All the way at the very back here, you're going to want to put just a little dab of grease. You can put some here too, so that when you put this back in, that button is greased. All right. Now I believe in order to keep that drag lever where it belongs, we're going to need to flip this upside down like this so that it'll stay in that notch. And then we will gently get that to line up through the hole and drop it back in. At that point, we're ready to put these 3 screws back in. This one, this really long one down here, and this one over here. All right. Now we've got this collar to put back on. And remember, it's only one way it can go in. So we'll set it in place and put those screws in. By the way, this little thing right here, that's your clicker for your drag. It drags along here on the bottom, so it makes that clicking sound, but it sure isn't very loud. Okay. So, in the meantime, let's go ahead and get this guy put back in place. Now it's going to sit here, and you're going to rotate it in. And we got to get it to sit right and rotate into place. Once you do, if you got it right, it'll just rotate on in. I didn't have it right, apparently. There we go. Okay, that's all the way down. All right, now comes our stacks of washers. Our first one is going to be, this one is not in the right place, I don't believe. I believe that this should be this flat washer first. Okay, I believe he's supposed to go right here. Next should go this floppy washer, the one that's bent. Okay, the next washer to go on is going to be this one. Okay, and it's going to come in and go right here. See the bend right here? That's going to go in between those 2 notches. Like so. And then you've got this Teflon washer. And it slides on. Now, next is going to go our spool. And this spool appears to be in pretty good shape. I'm going to wipe off the top of it a little bit. And the spool is going to drop on, like so. With that in place, we're now ready to put on another Teflon washer. Right here, the Teflon, that's your drag. It's going to ride against there. Now, how is this working? Anybody know? Let's take this back apart for a second, and let me walk through it. Okay, as you rotate your drag over here, okay, that's pushing as it rotates on there. You saw how I had to get it started and then it screwed down. Well, what's happening is you rotate it this direction, it's screwing up. It's taking that plate and screwing it up, forcing it tighter and tighter against this washer. Well, as it forces against this washer, that's going to squeeze your spool in between the bottom drag washers and the top drag washers. Okay, now let's go ahead and put it all the way down to the bottom again, because that's the easy way to install this. So we put this on, then goes your Teflon washer, then goes this steel washer with the keyway. Okay, and there's these keyways have got to go down into the ones that are on the spool like that. See there? Can you see that? Okay, they lock into there like so. Once that's done, you can put your E-washer back, or E-clip, and then clip it back into place. Now, we're ready to put, oh, I did not grease or oil this. I did clean it, but I didn't grease or oil it. We're gonna put a little grease in here where these roll. Give it a little bit of fresh grease. Screw this down. All right. Let's put the handle back on, like so. Put your handle screw back in, tighten it down. Okay, and there you have it. All right, now let's test our drag. Right now, here you go. There's your clicker that you were just looking at. Okay, let's start turning it on to positive drag. Yeah. There you go. Yep, getting much more positive. That's getting so positive you can't hardly pull it. Okay, by the time it comes up and goes through here, it's going to be really tight. So let's go ahead and loosen that back up. That's how it works, guys. That's all there is to that drag. Let's go ahead, put your line through. I'm going to be taking this line off of here. I don't leave line on. I probably won't be fishing with this one, but there we go. Tighten it out. Oh yeah, much tighter. Hit the button. There we go. Easy cast. And wind it in. And there you have, Rudy, the Ugly Cast by Shakespeare. And looks like they almost made a little face on the back of it here, make you smile. And it's got a metal cap. It's actually a fairly nice little reel, you know, for spincast reels. It'll do its job. And anyway, I hope you guys like what you saw here today. If you do, please hit the like button. If you didn't like it, by all means, hit the dislike button. Tell me what it is you didn't like about my video. That's how I go about improving them. And for me to say my videos are perfect, no, they're not even close, folks. I understand that. And for now, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out.